What is up, everyone? My name is Michael Pohl with Bay Area Aquatics, and today I'm going to be giving a little bit of an update and response video, response video to probably my most, actually not even probably, it is my most viral YouTube video. It's got like 200 something thousand views on it, which I was expecting like 50 views, so took off quite a bit, about my power heads and sponge filters. That video has caused a lot of kind of controversy. I've gotten a lot of hate for that video. I've gotten a lot of likes for that video. A lot of you guys are here simply because of that video. I'd argue that 98% of you guys wouldn't be here if that video didn't take off the way it did. So I'm glad it did, but it wasn't a video I was expecting to do very well. I was kind of playing around with some stuff. I'm still, even at this moment, I'm only like a year and like 3 months into the hobby. So back then I was only like 6 months into the hobby, if that. And yeah, so I was definitely playing around with some new things and playing around with stuff. And yeah, and like I said, a lot of people didn't agree with me, didn't like the way I did it, had, you know, whatever. So I just wanted to make an update on how that turned out, why I agree with it and don't agree with it, why I still stand by it, and kind of addressing some of the concerns. So first off, the very kind of stupid thing, again, I was newish to the channel. I was kind of just putting out stuff for the sake of putting out stuff. I wasn't really like super into it. A lot of people complained that my tank was super dark in that video. One, I was using external lighting. I was running the camera on auto, so I wasn't like super concerned about balance. Like right now I balance this, right? I sit here and I play with the lights until the tank's not too bright but not too dark, and I didn't do that back then. And three, it was a cheap PetSmart tank, so there's only like 2 or 3 LEDs. Now I've got, you know, a crap ton. It's a whole LED bar, but there was only a handful of LEDs in a little plastic hood. And when I put the sponge filter in the tank, I can't put it in the tank with the hood on it, so I can't like, I couldn't light the tank, but I had the camera on auto, so it, you know, adjusted for me, not inside the tank. And yeah, so I'm aware the tank was dark. I do know what I'm doing videography wise. I was just lazy. Again, I was only expecting like 20, 30 views tops. And yeah, so yes, I'm aware the tank's dark. If you really need that much help taking an object and putting it from outside the tank to inside the tank, I'm probably not the person for you, because I'm just gonna assume most people can do that on their own. The next little concern that a couple of people pointed out, and I haven't even watched the video in like a while. I probably should have before I filmed this, just so I knew. But a lot of people said that I used a way too big sponge filter in the 37-gallon tank, which is the same footprint as a 29 for those that don't know. It's just a little taller. I used a 4.5-inch sponge, which is something for like a 75-gallon aquarium. I know that was huge for that tank. A week later, I upgraded to the 75-gallon, and I knew I was going to be doing that. So I specifically bought a bigger sponge filter because I knew I was going to be upgrading to a bigger tank. I think I said that in the video. I might not have, or if I did, I didn't do a very good job of explaining. That's why I got the big sponge filter versus a little one. And yeah, and that's why I bought one. I think I had a 400-gallon-per-hour power head or something like that. That's why I bought a pretty heavy one, because again, it was going in a big tank, not staying in that little tank. The little tank was simply to put it up for the video so that it was there. That's also why I didn't buy a glass hood and an LED bar with that tank, because I knew I was going to be getting rid of it. I sold it. I don't even own that tank anymore. About 2 weeks after that, I didn't own that tank. So the next big concern that video had was concerns of clogging. And that sponge filter, it was a cheap Chinese sponge filter, so it was a very like tight, fine pored sponge. I cleaned it every week with my hang-on back filter, because why not? I didn't have any issues with it clogging. The other thing is, people said it was gonna suck the sponge inside and get in the power head. I never had that happen once, or even remotely happen, or even show signs of that happening. I ran that fine sponge filter for probably about a month before I switched it. Didn't have an issue with it. Didn't run it for a super long time, but yeah, I didn't have an issue with that. After about a month, I had a company reach out to me and send me an ATI Pro, which is a more coarse sponge filter, and that's what most people use with power heads, and didn't have an issue with that one. I didn't even clean that sponge for the whole time. I think I cleaned it once or twice for the whole time it was in the tank. It was in the tank for like 2 months. Never even touched it. I specifically had it for like some a little bit of extra bio filtration. Obviously, if you get too strong of a power head and too, you know, dense of a sponge, I can definitely see that happening. But again, in my experience, it wasn't something I had. If you didn't touch it and didn't clean it for a while, you'd probably have that issue. But for someone that was cleaning it every week, every other week, wasn't having that issue, didn't see that issue, and for me, it wasn't a concern. The next big thing, and this is probably one of the most concerned topics that people had, was aeration in the tank. That was not my only filter in the tank. It was never planned to be the only filter in the tank, so I wasn't worried about aeration. I had hang-on back filters, so it's, you know, that gets plenty of aeration that way. And so I didn't have an issue with it. There is a little attachment to feed air into it, and if I was running it as a sole filter in the tank, I probably would have suction cupped it to the side or ran a stronger intake tube, or put the straight up and down output versus the one that kicks it across the tank, so that it would hit the top and cause aeration and surface agitation that way. Again, for what I was using it for was just simply extra biological filtration, and to kind of try it out to see if it was even usable, not as a sole filter for my aquarium. And that wasn't ever the plan, and yeah, so that wasn't a big deal for me. That also brings me on to my next point. Was a lot of people were concerned that it was the main filtration and that's not a good filter, and then I had other people telling me that they've been doing this for years and I should use nothing else. Supposedly it's a very common thing out in Europe. Again, I'm in the United States. It's not very common out here, at least not that I've seen. And so I had all sorts of people like, yeah, this is like super basic knowledge. I'd been in the hobby for months and I'd never even heard of it until like 2 days before I made that video. I ordered the stuff for it and made the video. And so it was new to me. I thought it was cool. I thought it was a good idea. Like I said, not trying to say, you know, it's my idea at all. I'm not trying to say I'm the smartest person in this hobby and know everything, but I'm also someone that likes to try things, even if I know they're not going to work, so that I can get a first-hand knowledge of why it doesn't work, why it does work, which situations it might work in, and things like that. Through that video, I also found out about box filters, because people were like, well, for what you were saying, it sounds like you want a box filter. And I'd never heard of a box filter either. And so I actually do like box filters. I'm running 2 of them right now out of 5 tanks, 4 tanks, 5 tanks. 5 tanks. I have 2 of them with box filters and no other sorts of filtration. So, you know, like I said, it's that experience and finding out things, and even now people give me crap about using box filters. I like them, they work for what I need them to, and they do what I need it to do. As far as using the sponge filter with a power head for a main source of filtration, I do actually believe there's situations where that will actually work very well. My 10-gallon beta tank, for those that haven't seen it, is like kind of shoved barely where a 10-gallon fits. I can't fit anything bigger. I might be able to squeeze a 20 high in there, but that's one of the reasons why I was using air versus hang-on back filter, is because I had to put the air pump elsewhere and run an air line to it, and having a power head in that tank would have worked a lot better. Now it's a 10-gallon, it's a beta tank. I couldn't really find anything that was weak enough and a small enough that it just didn't work. So I'm running an Aquarium Co-op air pump with a small box filter for that tank, and it does great. Absolutely, I'd prefer that over a power head actually. But if I was running like a 75-gallon and the walls were built up around it and you just couldn't fit hang on back or anything like that, I don't want to run an air pump that is that loud in that area of the house or in my bedroom or anything like that. So, you know, yes, you can get air pumps that are big enough for these, but when running an air pump to another room and running tubing isn't an option, when it needs to be quiet because you don't want something louder, everyone goes, well, this air pump's virtually quiet. Quiet is a relative term. A Tetra 10 air pump in my living room isn't a big deal because there's so much noise going out there, you never hear it. A Tetra 10 air pump in my bedroom is super loud and annoying to me. I can't stand it. I don't like the noise of it. It bothers the crap out of me when I'm reading or working or things like that. So again, it's a relative term. What's not loud for you might be crazy loud for someone else, whether it's just loud because they don't like it, loud because they've got some sort of medical problem, whatever it is, it can definitely be an issue. Now, when you've got a tank that's pretty much blocked on all sides, at that point, you're limited to either above the tank or internal. Not everyone wants to run an above the tank sump. Not everyone has the space to run an above the tank sump or any sort of above the tank canister or anything like that. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone's comfortable with that. Some people just like everything to be 100% in the tank. And that's where I think a power head and a sponge filter set up the right way can definitely be an awesome addition to it. Like I said, if I was setting it up as a sole source, I wouldn't have used the directional output that put it sideways. I definitely would have pointed it up ran a tube that ran up, something like that, and it very well could be. It's a very limited situation, but it's a situation that happens nonetheless. I have it in my house. I know a couple other people that run some sort of weird internal filter or a weird air setup just because, you know, they wanted a tank in a certain area and that was the only way it could work. Even for things like me, I run a commercial videography business. I've thought about putting an air or a fish tank in my studio before. The biggest problem I have is, again, even like the little air pumps right here, the Aquarium Co-op air pumps are too loud. I pick up the bubbles from the surface, right? Hang-on back filters, I pick up the bubbles from the surface. It just, when you're, you know, controlling the audio that much to the point where you can't even have the air conditioning running in the suite next door or else it messes with your audio, you know, quietness can be a big thing. That's the reason why I don't have a fish tank in that area. But if I wanted to, power heads and sponge filters would probably be the way to go. So another thing is I don't run the sponge filter with a power head in this tank anymore. I took it out a month or two ago, something like that. You can probably go back in my videos and notice when it disappears. And I didn't need it anymore. When I found box filters, the biggest reason why I wanted a sponge filter in this tank was I wanted an extra filter where if the power goes out, I could plug, you know, a battery powered air pump into it and just at least keep some aeration, a little bit of filtration going. If I wanted to seed a new tank, I was still setting up a lot of tanks at the time, so I wanted to have that extra stuff. If I needed to take a fish on vacation or to a fish store or what, you know, if I'm moving, whatever the situation may be, I wanted to have an extra sponge filter that's just seated and ready to go. And I didn't want to have an air pump running the whole time on something that I didn't really need. So that's where the power head came in handy for me, and it worked out great. And then I found out about box filters and all sorts of little DIY things that I can plug an air pump into and use media from my hang-on back filter. And it's another reason why I use hang-on back filters versus things like canisters, is it's easier to access media than breaking it open. And yeah, so for me, I ended up taking it out because at a certain point it just became an eyesore in the tank versus an actual useful thing. You can see I still have a sponge filter here. I'm just running it on an Aquarium Co-op air pump just because it's quiet. It's not that big of a deal for me, and I don't have to run the power head, and I have air and it, you know, surface agitation, all the good stuff there. And yeah, so that's why I ran it. That's why I did it. That's why I thought it was a good idea, because I wanted to have that extra one in case I needed quarantine or hospital or whatever else. And yeah. And then hopefully that addresses some of the concerns with the dark tank, the videography issues, the you know, whatever else concerns. I'll try to answer any other concerns in the comments. On the main video, I just got to the point where I stopped replying to them because there's no point anymore. But figured I'd make this video. I've been meaning to make this video. I've made this video a couple of times and I've never really been quite happy with it, but I think I'm just gonna put this one out just so that it's out and there. So if you're new here to the channel and you're liking what you see, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification so you get notified every time I upload a video. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, you know what to do. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.